Good morning to you all. I'm sorry I'm a little bit late getting online this morning, but as you may tell, I had a little accident and just had got the blood to stop flowing. So it's good to see you this morning. It's a blessing to be alive. It's a blessing to be with you. Thank you for joining in, letting me be a part of your life, letting us at Biblical Lifestyle Center in Texarkana, Texas, reach out to you this day. But most of all, may this Sabbath just be a day when the Holy One touches your heart and touches your spirit and releases the power, the majesty, and the beauty, the shalom of the kingdom of heaven in your life. Wherever you're from today, if you would just drop us a note. Let us know you're with us. Let us know you're on board. Let us know that you're enjoying your Sabbath. If you can, drop us a line. Let us know where you are and what's going on in your life. If you would also let us know what temperature you may be experiencing, whether it be Fahrenheit as you measure it or centigrade, Celsius as you measure it. Just let us know what it is. I'm curious. We're getting a cooler change in the atmosphere. Things are happening here in Texas that are pleasant. We're liking the weather better. But I understand my dear friends in South Africa may be still experiencing some bitter cold in their winter down there. So blessings to you. We got a chance to talk for a few minutes, share about the download of heaven. Moshe is in the middle of his how to build a kingdom of heaven-centered society discourse. He's on the plains of Moab. We're in the book of Deuteronomy. Right now we'll be studying Parsha Ekev. It begins with Deuteronomy 7 and verse 12 and concludes with Deuteronomy 11 verse 25. There are a number of pearls that we will find hidden in plain view in this Parsha. There are downloads of wisdom and downloads of understanding and revelation that are found here more so than anywhere else. Make sure I'm not bleeding. I think I'm not. Okay. So this is where we are with regard to Parsha Ekev. I call this particular section of the Torah, this choreographed script for the past week, being the Parsha of Tikkun Olam protocols that are designed to leave a kingdom of heaven footprint on the world. Let me repeat that for you. It's our subtitle for the day. The Parsha, the section of Torah of Tikkun Olam protocols that are designed to leave a kingdom of heaven footprint on the world. Let's get started, okay? So we have Tikkun Olam. I've referenced a phrase that you may have heard. As a matter of fact, there's an old joke that says that a group of tourists, Christians and different religions, came to Jerusalem, came to Israel for the first time. They call it the Holy Land. They came there and they found a Hebrew-speaking guide, and they asked him, how do you say Tikkun Olam in Hebrew? Well, the joke is the fact it is a Hebrew phrase, but it's so commonly used in the world that people may misinterpret it because they don't understand what it is. A Hebrew phrase. It has Hebrew meanings. Same thing as, how do you say amen in Hebrew? Well, how do you say hallelujah in Hebrew? That may be the same kind of a question or some kind of a joke you might pose. Well, these are words or phrases that the world has come to know. They may have been given connotations outside their biblical, their eternal foundations. And that is what we're going to try to restore. I want to define for you very briefly Tikkun Olam from a biblical eternal standpoint. Tikkun Olam is a matter of understanding the creator of the universe's end game. Why we're all here and what this is all about. Tikkun Olam is understanding the end game and therefore working together in tandem with the Holy One, as partners with the Holy One. Of course, we're the junior partners. He's the senior partner. But working with him for the purposes of healing and redemption and restoration. And we do this through his protocols, not through social justice systems. That's a part of the misunderstanding that the world has about Tikkun Olam. This is not done through movements. This is not done through governmental programs or policies. This is not done through an economic platform. Tikkun Olam comes the way the Holy One said it was to come, through imparting bracha in Hebrew, blessing in English. As he told Moshe, as the Holy One, as he told Avraham first, He told Abraham, it says, I will make you a great nation. Your name will be great. I will bless you, and you will be a blessing. It says, and I will, through you will all families, all households, all mishpachot of the world be blessed. All nations will be blessed through you. This is how he brings tikkun olam, through bringing about the blessing that is upon Avram in about his seed throughout the world, his children, his descendants, and those who are joined to him by bloodline and those who are joined to him by his emunah, his faith. And therefore, this is the process. We bring bracha, we bring shalom, we bring kedusha, and we do it according to the mitzvah, the mishpatim, in other words, the commandments, as we'd say in English, the judgments, as it said in English, the ordinances, and the devarim, the words, the power-packed words of the Holy One. That's how tikkun olam comes. It comes in a micro level, not on a macro level, till the Messianic kingdom at least. Tikkun olam does not come through broad-based policies or high-sounding rhetoric. Tikkun olam comes from doing the work of blessing. Barakah, shalom, kedusha, holiness, according to the instructions of Torah. So, if we're going to get into this part of the section of Moshe's discourse on the plain that deals with how to build a kingdom of heaven-centered society, we must get a picture of tikkun olam. What is the end game? What's the current state of the world we're in and the people that live around us? And how do we view them and what do we want for them? How do you see the Eretz? And when I say the Eretz, it usually translated the world or the earth. But remember, human beings were made out of Eretz too. Adam was formed out of the dust of the earth. And so how do you see the Eretz that the Holy One has placed before you, dear one? This is the challenge we're going to face in Parsha Ekev and beyond. Do you see the Eretz through a perverted, corrupted lens, or do you see it through the Tikkun Olam lens, the end-game restoration lens of our Creator, the eternal vision, the eternal view? So, I'm going to give you a few, about 6 or 7 different ways you could look at the world, and most people have to choose one or more of these approaches. The first, no necessary order to this, but the first one I would bring into your attention is some people have an obstacle course orientation to the world. They see the world as an obstacle they must fight through, overcome. Sometimes they're overwhelmed by the level of the obstacles that they're facing, or how difficult it seems, or they're challenged by the fact that, this is something I can overcome, I can whip, I can beat. So the obstacle course orientation, it's a very personal, selfish kind of an approach. This is my obstacle course, so to speak, and I'm here to prove I can beat it. Well, that's sort of the obstacle course orientation of life. Many people seem to follow this orientation of life. The second one is the danger zone, no-fly zone orientation. I just don't like this world. I hate this world. I don't want to be in it. I don't want to be around it. I'm a little afraid of it, but I just don't like it. And this danger zone, I have to live here. I'm not happy about it. Therefore, I have this danger zone, no-fly zone orientation. The third orientation is very similar. It's a captivity prison orientation. Some people look at the world and say, I'm bound here. I'm caught here. I'm imprisoned here. I'm in captivity here. And I don't like it. It was another part of the danger zone process. But I feel like I need to escape it somehow. So we begin to go into escapisms. And that becomes from substances to ideas and rhetoric and ideology and politics, all sorts of ways to escape the captivity, the prison orientation. So we talked about the obstacle course orientation. We talked about the danger zone or no-fly zone orientation to life and to the world. And we talked about the captivity and prison orientation. Now I want to go a little deeper. Some people see it as a wasteland. This is such a wasteland, it's just disastrous. We can't fix it. This is kind of the modern ecologist, naysayer process. Oh, the world's too far gone, we can't fix it. We can't, and you look at it from a standpoint, we can't fix this from policy or government standpoint, and they're so right. They never were intended to fix it that way. We never were intended to impose laws or rules on anybody to make it come about. What we're called to do is to bring about the orientation of fixing the world through the mitzvot, the mishpatim, the hukim, and the devarim of Torah, and only that way, and through living our lives in such a way that we show the world what it looks like to love the Holy One, our God, with all our heart, with all our soul, with all our strength, as we talked about last week in Parsha, in Parsha Va'etchanan. And to love our neighbor as ourselves, to love the foreigner, even to love our enemies. This is how we handle the wasteland orientation. It is not a wasteland. It looks like a wasteland now because we have a limited vision, perhaps, as to what it could be. The next level of orientation, the kind of orientation people can have to the world that color it wrongly, is the treasure map orientation, or the bucket list fodder orientation. What's in this world for me? What can I get out of it? How can I make myself happy? How can I make myself rich? The treasure map, materialistic orientation. That's not the way to bring redemption, restoration, and healing to the world. It is very, very selfish, even more than the obstacle course orientation was. And then the sixth type of orientation we could have to look at the world would be the battlefield orientation. I'm in a war here, and I've got to fight. I got to protect myself and mine at all costs. And we're at war, and I've got to destroy those who are my enemies, and I've got to curse them and yell at them, and I hate them, and I've got to conquer. Well, it's very similar to the obstacle course, but it has a more violent, vengeful, angry approach. Well, many people are in all these orientations, but what do you see, beloved? What do you see when you look at the world? When you look at the city that you live in, or the neighborhood, or the countryside that you abide in, when you go to the marketplace, when you see the people in the marketplace, and you see the food and the other supplies and things you could purchase there, when you see the forum, the political forum, what do you see? What do you see? What is your orientation to this world? Do you have a tikkun olam understanding of the end game? Because that brings us to the seventh, the glorious orientation that we could have toward the world. And that's the Gan Eden, the Garden of Eden, sleeping beauty orientation. What is happening is the world, the earth, is the same one the Holy One created and made into a garden. The Garden of Eden is still here. It's just been grown up with weeds and thorns and thistles. And it's been abandoned and mistreated and abused. Now, each one of us is called and given the power to bring into it the same kind of the ancient old fable of the Sleeping Beauty and the prince that saw her as being more than just a Sleeping Beauty. So it is with us. We're called to have a vision, an understanding of the end game. It says, I know this world may look like an obstacle course. It may look like a danger zone. It may look like captivity or a prison. It may look like a wasteland now. It may look like a treasure map that I could find something in for myself. It may be like a battlefield. But what it really is, what the Holy One has designed it to be, is the Garden of Eden, waiting for the kiss of the Prince. Well, may it so it be. That be our orientation to this world, learning about Tikkun Olam. To orient you to a little further to the passages we'll be studying, I want to talk to you about what this is in the grand calendar of the Hebrew people. This is the second week, the second Sabbath of Consolation. It began after the Tisha B'Av, the 9th of Av, the desolation of the temple. The Holy One began to comfort us. And last week it was from Isaiah 40, comfort my people. Speak tenderly to Jerusalem, her warfare is accomplished, etc., etc. And the idea here is that now for the next 7 weeks, this is the second of the 7, there are messages coming forth from Isaiah, the second half of the book of Isaiah, as it were, that are going to tell us the God's end game, to catch us up in his vision for what's going to happen. And so in the second half, it's Isaiah 49:14 through 51, verse 3. So it's all of chapter 50, the last part of chapter 49, and the first 3 verses of chapter 51. Let me give you just a flavor, a hint of what this chapter is, because this is telling us where on the calendar we are and what it is the Holy One's trying to say to us. Now, in the aftermath, it starts out, in the aftermath of the destruction of Jerusalem and the raising of the temple and the carrying of Bnei Israel, the seed of Avram, into captivity, and metaphorically, through the prophet's voice, Zion, the beautiful hill, the beautiful city, the beautiful area, regions, cries out, Azavani Adonai, Adonai Veshachani. And it basically says, the Holy One has forsaken me. The Holy One has forgotten me. This is this plaintive, metaphorical cry of the earth particularly the land of Israel, crying out, in the hill of Zion, crying out to the Holy One. The Holy One has forsaken me. The Holy One has forgotten me because there's a lack of vision. But the Holy One makes a poignant response to this cry. Through the prophet's words, the Holy One says, can a woman forget her nursing child? Or not love the son of her womb? And then he says, perhaps she could forget. It is possible that a human being, woman, mother, could forget her nursing child. It's almost unfathomable, but it's possible. Or the love of her womb, the child of her womb. But I will not forget you, the Holy One says. I will not forget you. Behold, I have engraved you on my palms, on the palm of my hands. It's usually translated. Now that's the way it starts. And it ends in Isaiah 51:3. He kind of concludes his statements by saying, Shema me, listen to me, Shema me, you who follow after righteousness, you who seek the Holy One. I know you're downcast. I know you're distraught. I know things have happened in the world that shock you. I know you feel the world is your wasteland. Look to the rock from which you were hewn, he continues, and to the hole of the pit from which you were dug. Look to Avram, your father, Abraham as he's known in the Western world, and to Sarah as he's known in the Western world, who bore you. For I called them alone and blessed them and increased them. And he continues and concludes, for the Holy One will comfort Zion. Remember that Zion made this plaintive cry. He is forsaken. For the Holy One will comfort Zion, says the prophet. And he will comfort all her waste places, all her wasteland. And he will make her wilderness, her dry areas like Eden. And her desert will be made like the garden of the Holy One. Joy and gladness will be found in it. Thanksgiving and the voice, the sound of zimra, of songs played on stringed instruments. Now this is tikkun. This is the vision he has. He will comfort. He will bring comfort to all the waste places and restoration. He will make the wilderness of this earth like Eden. The desert areas like the garden of the Holy One. He will bring joy and gladness where there is darkness and despair. He will bring thanksgiving where there is anger and angst and anxiety. He will bring the voice of song where is the cries and the screams of the victims and those who are crying for vengeance. He will bring these good things forth. Do you have this vision? This is the vision of the Sleeping Beauty. Well, let me tell you about where Moshe is. Moshe is in the middle of his second speech, or actually the very beginning of his second speech. This is the longest of the Torah. This is the how to build a kingdom of heaven-centered society upon the earth. And he's preparing the people of the covenant at his time to go into, to cleanse and purify, and take possession of Eretz Yisrael and turn it into a strategic launching pad for the kingdom of heaven to come into earth. Moshe is preparing the people to go into Eretz Yisrael. This is essential phase one of the plan of the kingdom of the Holy One to come upon earth and his will to be done here. Has to be. Moshe has to prepare the people to go into Israel. This is going to be the launching pad for the rest of it. Now there will be a phase two. We are familiar with it. Yeshua, our rabbi, came in the flesh 3,000 years after Moshe to prepare the people of the covenant to go out from Eretz Yisrael, to go phase two. We came in. Phase two is to go out from Eretz Yisrael into all the world, to walk alongside and among people of all nations and ethnicities, like Abraham was told to do, to bring a blessing to every family on the face of the earth, to bring blessing, to show an example of what Torah and the heavenly kingdom lifestyle was supposed to be, how it was intended to be, and to make disciples, to make covenant engraftees from all nations and ethnicities. That's the essential phase two. Phase one, go into the land, establish the strategic base, the beachhead, so to speak, of the kingdom. Then Yeshua came. His purpose of coming was to send us out into the world to do the same thing. Yeshua will come again, the third phase. He will come this time clothed in majesty. And what he will come to do this time will be to call the people of the covenant and their harvest from the many nations and the ethnicities of this world Call them all back to Eretz Israel, to the land of Israel. Call them all back to the Torah lifestyle. Call them all back to the image of God, the B'Tselem Elohim, the shadow of God, purpose and impact upon the earth, and fix the ecosystem and turn it back into a place of blessing. The desert will turn into a flowering garden. That's essential phase 3 of the kingdom of heaven coming to earth. Yeah, as we talk about Parsha Ekev, and this whole Sabbath is dedicated to it, and I only have a few minutes to talk to you about it, but the questions on the table as we do this are worldview and footprint questions. The question I have to ask you first is, do you know the potential that the Creator has designed into the places that you are going? Do you know the potential for garden-like beauty and fruitfulness that the Creator has designed into the places that you go? If you knew that, your perspective and your worldview and your approach to those places might change. If you didn't just see wasteland or obstacle course, if you didn't just see battlefield, if you didn't just see treasure chest, if you saw it as with the potential that the Holy One designed into every square inch of the earth, every square centimeter of the eretz of this world, you might change. So do you understand that the Creator has designed great potential into every place that you go? And do you understand the role that you have been called to play in bringing forth that potential? This is the Tikkun Olam protocols that he's going to put into Torah and tell us about in the next few weeks. So what Moshe is doing in his second discourse is calling forth a people of Tikkun Olam, a Devarim people who walk in the empowered words of the Holy One. And he's calling forth them to be a people of Abraham-like, and Messianic footprint. If we see the end game, that the Creator of the universe has these 3 phases of taking the seed of Abraham into Eretz Israel, Messiah coming to take them out of the Eretz Israel into the world, and Yeshua returning to come back and call them forth from the world back into Eretz Israel to form the kingdom of heaven upon earth in its fullness. Then you see a different world. When you start looking at things in the world, you don't get so oppressed or depressed or angry or offended by what's happening or fearful of what's happening. Instead, you say, okay, let's roll up our sleeves. Let's get to work. So the question now becomes, what kind of footprint do you leave in the places that you go, where you visit, where you work, where you shop? What kind of footprint do you leave? What kind of fragrance is left behind? What kind of atmosphere do you leave behind? Is it a bracha, is a blessing? Or is it kedusha? Is it holiness? Or is it perversion and corruption? Is it joy? Is it hope? Is it shalom? Or do you leave a dark shadow, a dark cloud of a very sullen approach, a very melancholy way? What is the footprint that you leave in the places you visit? How significant an impression do your presence and your conversations and your expenditures of creative energy, the songs you sing, the things you paint, the work you do, how significant impression does that leave on the hearts and minds of the men, women, children, and the physical geographical places within your sphere of influence? Are you a polluter, or are you a remediator? Are you a net taker, or are you a net giver, a contributor to Tikkun Olam, a contributor to the ecosystem management protocols of God? On what frequency, at what amperage, and with what tone are you broadcasting whatever message it is that you feel compelled to broadcast? The messages you're sending with your life, with your facial expressions, with your attitudes, with your vocal approaches. Are you leaving a fragrance, or are you leaving an odor? Are you leaving a gaping wound, or are you leaving a soothing, healing balm? Are you leaving people with a reason to despair, or a reason to rejoice? Well, you thought the desert was challenging. You thought the wilderness for 40 years that we spent was challenging. The real challenge of the mission lies ahead, because you see, things have happened in Canaan. Things have happened in the world around us. Stuff has gone on, and it is no longer like Eden. It is now like a wasteland. Everywhere, for Moshe and the people then at that day, it was talking about the land of milk and honey, had become a land of thorns, thistles, and worse. Around us, we see the same thing. That's why we have these three-phase mission, to be sent according to his will and be sent out in his words, in the power of his words, to fulfill and live those words. But though you may see how bad and how un-Eden-like the world around you is, or even if you look at Israel, how you think it may be un-Eden-like there, look again. Beloved, look again. Look again with the Devarim, the holy words, empowered eyes. This time look with his viewpoint. Look at what the Holy One has said in front of you. Look at that and see it through his eyes of redemption and restoration. Well, what has happened to the land of Israel? Let's focus on what Moshe was talking about in Parsha Ekev and what is a necessary part of the return on the end of days. Going back to Eretz Israel. What has happened to the land of Israel in the absence of the patriarchs? In the absence of Abraham, of Yitzhak and Yaakov? In the aftermath of the Yosef incident when he was sold into slavery and the world was left with a stench? Well, in the aftermath of Shechem and the destruction of the city on the basis of one man's activity, what has happened? Well, it is not pretty. In the realm of thorns and thistles, there are now flesh eaters, there are biters, there are stingers, there are foul odor sprayers, there are corrupting howlers in both animal and human form roaming Eretz Israel, Eretz Canaan as it's called at that time. But so it is with the world in which you live. There are flesh eaters, there are biters, there are stingers, there are food odor sprayers. And I'm not talking always about animals here. Corrupting howlers, I'm talking about people as well, because you see of the corruption that's taken place, the lack of anyone with a sleeping beauty, Eden restoration vision and activity. So let's look particularly at the Canaani, the 7 groups of ites that are now dwelling in the land. They're usurpers. They've come, take over. Abraham is gone. Yitzhak is gone. His friends are gone. The ones he influenced are gone. 400 years, the Canaani have had their way here. They have taken over. And they have taken over, and they don't see the Holy One. They don't see the world through the Holy One's eyes. They just look at flesh and pseudo-intellect, and they come up with the idea that the things they see have power. They attribute power to things that are fleshly, and so they have gods of fertility. They have gods of erotic sensual attraction. They have gods of war. They have gods of wind and rain and lightning. They have gods of the underworld and the afterlife. They have gods of the sea. They have gods of the mountains, the hilltops. They have gods of groves of trees. They just attribute power to all these beings. And with a little subliminal encouragement from the serpent and humanity at its worst, they begin to attribute superhuman personalities to those forces. They they make graven images that look like them, and they poster this. It's like posters on the wall. You see it in form of ideals of ideology, ideals of political power. You see people put faces of the people. This is like the images, the graven images. Sometimes people use entertainers and celebrities. Some people use politicians and ideologues and rhetoric. People with rhetoric. Some people use people of religion, popes and rabbis and preachers and all sorts of imams and different things. They put their pictures up. These are idols. These are graven images. This is what people do when they don't have the vision of the Holy One changing the world through his words, through people actually engaging with his mitzvot, his mitzvatim, his hukim, and his devarim the way they're supposed to. Instead, look to some other person, something bigger than themselves, and make images of them. So they make superhuman personalities of them, they make graven images of them, and then they make legends about them, and they actually teach them as if they're true. They can make up stuff about them, and they just seem so wonderful, but it's not really true. And what they do is they suppress the neshama within human beings in their root. The neshama is the God-breathed breath of God that came out like in Genesis 2:7. The Holy One lifted up Adam after he made him want to make him more than just the animal he created in Genesis 1. Genesis 2, he actually breathed his own breath into the nostrils of Adam. And that's his neshama, his nishmat ha'im, his breathing the breath of eternal life when God has placed eternity in the heart of man, as the Ecclesiastes said. So the neshama is abiding in the human form, but is also being overshadowed in Canaan and most of the places you go and the people you know by two other factors. There is the flesh. The flesh is cried out and more powerful and subjects the neshama to its desires, its hungers, its appetites, its drives, its instincts, its attitudes, its disposition. And then there's the other factor, which is the nephesh, the will, the mind, emotion. Some people call it the soul, misunderstanding it. Don't think it's the same thing as the neshama. It's not. The nephesh is the human will, the human mind, the human emotions, the human logic, reason capabilities, the superstitions, the ethnic and gender and class and culture-based ideas and worldviews, and the opinion matrix that they have developed. This is pseudo-intellect. So the two things that keep the neshama from arising and being awakened and doing what it's called to do to bring this tikkun olam to the world are the flesh and the nephesh, or the pseudo-intellect and the emotions. There is such a lie matrix that the flesh and the nephesh, the soul, the mind, will, and emotions of man bring to people. First of all, the neshama delights in doing the will of the Creator, the ways of the Creator, according to the words of the Creator. But the flesh and the nephesh oppose all that. They want self-will. They want to feed appetites. They want to feed ego. And they want to feed into opinion and ideology and that sort of thing. I won't go through. I've got a list of several things, but basically one of them is the neshama seeks true wisdom from heaven, the understanding that comes from knowing and walking with and following the ways of God. But the flesh and the nephesh, they want the pseudo-intellect. They want to think things. They want to, I think, therefore I am, the very Greek Western mindset that we control the world, and therefore they can go on the basis of that. We can control people by telling them we control the world. I won't go into others. I'll go forward. What's the context of Parsha Ekev? It's Moshe's second discourse, and he is going to take us on quite a journey here over the second discourse. Let's do our call to worship, and we'll talk a few minutes more about the Parsha itself. Join me if you know the words. If you don't, just relax and enjoy. Baruch hu Adonai Hamvorach. Baruch Adonai Hamvorach Leolam Vayet. Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher bakar banu mikol ha'amin, v'natan lanu et Torato. Baruch atah Adonai, noten ha'Torah. And now open our eyes, O Holy One, that we may see wondrous things in your Torah. For we are but strangers in the earth, so do not hide your commandments from us. The opening aliyah, the opening verses of Ekev, read as follows. I'll start in the Hebrew and I'll try to give you a kind of a formal, informal translation. V'haya Ekev, that's how it starts. V'haya Ekev, and it must happen. Heal. Tishme'un et hamishpatim ha'ela. Tishme'un et hamishpatim ha'ele. Turn your ear to and pay attention to and now listen to and hear and come into alignment with and live in harmony with the decrees of bloodline and land, tikkun, healing, redemption, restoration I'm giving you. Ushmartem ve'asitem otam, and cherish them and treasure them and keep them and guard them and protect them in real ways and in real time, and do and build and make them and implement them in the real world. V'shamar Adonai Elohecha lecha, and then the Holy One, your God, will cherish and treasure and guard and safekeep and protect you. Et habrit ve'et chesed, he will keep the covenant, and the covenant furthering favor and loving kindness, asher nishba la'avotecha, that he swore to your fathers. Va'ahaveka, and he will love you. Ve'avareka, and he will bless you. Ve'herbeka uvrach pri vitnecha, and he will bless the fruit of your womb. Ufri admateka, and the produce of your land. Deganeka v'tiroshka v'yitshareka, your grain, your new wine, and your oil or shine producing produce. Shigar alfeka ve'ashtarot zoneka, the calves of your herds and the lambs of your flocks. Al ha'adma asher nishba la'avoteka letet lach, in and upon the land that he swore to entrust to your fathers. I said Moshe's taking us into the land of Israel to make it into the launching pad. Yeshua will later send us out. He did, and he will let us call us back in with our fruit. Baruch tiyeh mikol ha'amin, you will be blessed from the midst of all people, groups, and nations. This is the end game. This is the strategic plan. We will be blessed in and amongst the midst of all the people and the nations. That's the purpose of the exile. That's the purpose of the captivity. That's the purpose of the galut, as it's called. Hallelujah. The grand plan is bigger than anybody ever might have thought. So Moshe's topic is loving people and living out of the new creation blueprint for a kingdom of heavens and its society. In these early parts of his discourse, he's going to focus on reconnecting to the rock from which we're hewn, like we read about in the Haftarah for the week, about reawakening our neshama, because it's been suppressed under the nephesh and under the flesh. And the world has set the pattern, and we have not set the pattern. And therefore what people hear and talk about and live is out of the flesh and out of the nephesh, as opposed to out of the neshama. But we're called to reverse that. And we can start living out of the neshama, the God-breathed life force within us. We're called, therefore, as we do so, to activate the DNA scripts that are written in the Torah, the mitzvot, the mishpatim, the hukim, the commandments, the judgments, and the ordinances, as they're called in English, strangely enough. These living life words are called that bring tikkun to the world. It's not a means of a personal salvation. This is a means of bringing tikkun olam to the world. And that's why it's our mission, it's our purpose in life to do these things, not just to go to heaven when we die or to try to live the best life we can according to our own standards. We're going to redefine. What Moshe is going to do is basically redefine our identity, reconnect us with our purpose and our mission and our priorities. Those are the priorities of the kingdom. He's going to renew our minds. He's going to reconnect our thought life to our source. He's going to reconstruct our worldview, before discussing specific assignments, which we'll be doing over the next few weeks. Last week, in Moshe's final 36 days, we learned that he is giving this discourse. He introduced us to a foundation of grace. Chen, or Hanan in Hebrew. And this idea, if we don't understand that everything is based upon a foundation of grace, then we will be a very angry, cruel people who will try to impose forces on without having the vision for the Creator's vision of yes, it's a wasteland now. People are a waste product now, but we can bring the potential forth. So that's what grace is all about. Not just favor, not just good feelings. It's about the restoration that is possible and only through grace. So that is the foundation. He taught us that last week. He reminded us last week that the mission that we're called is to love the Holy One our God with all our heart, with all our soul, with all our strength, and to shema His voice, and to teach our children, children and our family households after us to walk in the ways of the Holy One. To love Him with all our heart. As I said, these are the things that are going to open up the doorway, the passageway, the Devarim passageway that relieve the breadcrumbs of heaven upon the earth. He's reminded us about the giving of the Torah, and that is the secret to everything. That's the secret to our success in life in this world and bringing his plan about generation by generation. This world is holding on to, walking in the mitzvot, the mishpatim, and the hukim of Torah. And he ended last week by saying, therefore, know that the Holy One, your God, he is God, the faithful God, who keeps covenant and mercy with those who love him, who keep his commandments for 1,000 generations. And he brings recompense to those who hate him, he does this in front of them to set them adrift, to cause them to be pruned. He is not slack with regard to those who hate him. He will bring shalom into them before their eyes. He'll bring to them the recompense of what they've. May say if, but if is another word in Hebrew, im, the aleph, yod, mem, and this aleph, mem. This word is kind of cause and effect. If we think in English, if, as, when, and to the extent. But ekev means that as the heel comes and impacts the world, ripples go forth. That this is not a matter of blessing or consequence. It is a matter of this is the way he has designed it. When we walk, we heal, and we'll talk about what healing means in just a second. When we heal, when we bring our heel to the earth, then it does things in the earth's atmosphere. This is what changes the world. So the idea of on the heels of the Holy One's people of covenant, keeping the betrothal covenant and the bridegroom's lifestyle priorities, the earth is changed. The Vayhaya Ekev. Let's talk about that for a second. The first two words. And it must come to pass. It will come to pass. Heal. You must heal. The short but powerful opening phrase contains two powerful words, two devarim, words that have pollination capacity and honey making capacity, inspiration capacity, impartation capacity, activation capacity. First one is haya. It's the be word, to be, to be and to exist and to function, haya. And the second word is ekev, which means to heal, to come to the heel. We'll talk about that. Positionally, where we are to remain at all times is at the Holy One's heel, so to speak. This is Messiah because we're talking about Genesis chapter 3, verse 16. Remember this prophecy, the heel of Messiah. So, when we heal, what does it mean? Heal, think about training a dog, a puppy dog. Dogs have a tendency to want to do their own thing. They put them on a leash, they run, especially if they get a little older, they start pulling the master. So when you go for a walk, what happens is you go for a walk, the dog is pulling you. That is not the way this is supposed to work. Instead, what you're supposed to be able to do is train the dog to heel. That means come to your left heel, to where his shoulders and his head are right at your left cheek, basically almost touching your left leg, and waiting for you to move, waiting upon you to move, and only going where you go. With me, some people use the phrase, with me, as opposed to I'm going with you, which is what happens with most dogs if people don't know what they're doing, trying to train them. Instead, the dog is trained to the command to come to the heel. And you must give a reward to the dog when he comes to the heel. So he learns that this is, and walk through with him and process it. And I'm not going to go through dog training with you. You can do that on your own. Look up the dog whisperer or something like that. But to train the heel, why does the animal pull against the leash? It doesn't understand that it's better off to walk, and the purpose that he has really is to walk with you. So, as works with the Holy One, he starts with a follow me or with me instruction. You see how Yeshua did this. and how with Moshe it was